Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So the 2020 election is finally over and we have an answer on what direction the American voters want our country to head over the next 2 to 4 years. Now, obviously some people were very happy with the election outcome, while others were not. But hey, that is what happens with elections in America. Some will win and some will lose. But at the end of the day, we just need to remember that we are all Americans. Now, one person that did win re-election was this guy, the senior senator from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell. Now, we should all know who he is. Senator McConnell is the majority leader of the Republican Party in the U.S. Senate. Now, with the election results likely indicating that the Republican Party will maintain control of the Senate, I wanted to take a look at some of the legislation that's been sitting on the Republicans' desk for the past 2 years. So, 2020, as we all know, has certainly been an unpredictable year. But we have also seen a great deal of important legislation pass over the past year or two by a majority vote in the House of Representatives. But unfortunately, none of these pieces of legislation went anywhere, but instead they sat on a desk somewhere in the Senate controlled by Mitch McConnell. In fact, according to GovTrack.us, on Election Day, there were 569 bills from the Democratic-controlled House still waiting for some type of action in the Republican-controlled Senate. So, with this in mind, I wanted to ask the question, what are the top 6 bipartisan bills currently stuck in Mitch McConnell's Republican-controlled Senate? As a quick note, what I'm presenting in this video are bipartisan bills that I believe Mitch McConnell will likely not allow to proceed with a floor vote if the Republicans do maintain control of the Senate in 2021. Now again, there are 569 bills that have passed the U.S. House of Representatives. Now obviously, not all of them substantially deal with pressing issues. There are some that likely have to do with commemorating certain Americans, or bills that focus on changing the name of federal buildings. As an interesting side fact, approximately 13% of all legislation that has been signed into law since 2019 has involved renaming or designating post offices and or clinics overseen by the Department of Veteran Affairs. So with this in mind, let's get started. Starting with number 6, LGBTQ rights. Now, the first bill I want to introduce to you is H.R. 5, the Equality Act. Now, the Equality Act has 240 co-sponsors, of which 4 are Republicans and 236 are Democrats. Now, it's not as bipartisan as it could be, but we still want to introduce to you because of the grand implications that it has to a wide number of people. Now, this particular bill has been stuck in Mitch McConnell's controlled Senate since May 17, 2019. It was Representative David Sicilian from Rhode Island who authored this bill in order to add sexual orientation and gender identity to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, thus enshrining such non-discrimination protections under federal law. The Equality Act will guarantee a nationwide standard to ensure that no American is ever forced to lose their job or home simply because of their sexual orientation. Now, on the Senate side, there's an equivalent bill called S. 788, the Equality Act, and every Democrat in the current session of the Senate has co-sponsored the Senate version of this bill. Unfortunately, this bill has been stuck in the Senate Judiciary Committee chaired by none other than Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who was just reelected to another term in the Senate. So, why is this bill important? Well, the Supreme Court recently affirmed that individuals are protected from job discrimination, but the Supreme Court does not make laws. So therefore, the Equality Act would officially make a law protecting a person from discrimination based on their sexual orientation. So if you agree, disagree, leave a comment below and we'll discuss this further in the comment section. Now, the next bill I want to introduce to you deals with women's rights. So coming in at number 5 is H.R. 2694, which is entitled Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Now, this particular act has 241 co-sponsors, of which 18 are Republicans and 233 are Democrats. So it's slightly bipartisan. And this bill has been stuck in the Senate controlled by Mitch McConnell since September 17th, 2020. Now, it was Representative Jared Nadler from New York who authored this bill that prohibits employment practices that discriminate against making reasonable accommodations for qualified employees affected by pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. Now, specifically, This bill declares that it is an unlawful employment practice to, among other things, fail to make reasonable accommodations to known limitations of such employees unless the accommodation would impose an undue hardship on the entity's business operation. This bill would also direct the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to provide examples of reasonable accommodations that shall be provided to affected employees unless the employer can demonstrate that doing so would impose an undue hardship. The bill prohibits state immunity under the 11th Amendment to the Constitution from an action for a violation of this bill. Now, this House bill has no similar bill currently introduced in the U.S. Senate. So, moving on, why is this bill important? Well, according to Neil Bradley, the U.S. Chamber Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer, he said, and I quote, by establishing clear guidelines and balancing the needs of workers and employers, this legislation will allow businesses to keep valued employees in the workplace, help ensure healthy pregnancies, and remove legal ambiguities that have led to litigation. This is what happens when Republicans and Democrats work together, and I urge the U.S. Senate to take up this bipartisan legislation swiftly, end quote. So do you agree with Neil Bradley? Agree or disagree? Leave a comment in the section below, and we'll get started on seeing this conversation further. Coming in number 4 is dealing with the post office. Specifically, we are going to talk about H.R. 2382, which is titled the USPS Fairness Act. Now, this act has 301 co-sponsors, of which 69 are Republican and 232 are Democrat. So it's a pretty bipartisan bill. And it's been stuck in the Senate controlled by Mitch McConnell since February 5th, 2020. Now, it was Democratic Representative Peter DeFazio of Oregon who authored this bill that addresses the serious problem that the U.S. Post Office is the only federal agency required to pre-fund their employees' future retirement health care benefits. Now, this legislation passed the House with 87 Republicans voting in favor of the bill. That's more than who co-sponsored the bill. The context regarding why this bill is needed is that it costs taxpayers billions of dollars more upfront than any other federal agency. At the current rate of financial loss, the U.S. Postal Service will run out of money in 2024, in just 4 years. The mandate to pre-fund their employees' benefits started in 2006 when Congress passed the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act. Now, this act required that the USPS pre-fund 75 years' worth of retiree health benefits in the span of 10 years, a cost of about $110 billion. Although the money is intended to set aside for future post office retirees, the funds have instead been diverted to help pay down the national debt. As a side note, this 2006 act that I previously mentioned was passed by a voice vote in both chambers of Congress. Now, both chambers at that time were controlled with a Republican majority, and the bill was signed into law with Republican President George W. Bush. So, why is this particular bill now important? Well, supporters of it argue that the bill makes financial sense, and it puts the Postal Service on an even footing with literally every other federal agency and helps ensure that the solvency of one of the programs that most directly affects ordinary Americans. So, agree with this bill? Disagree with this bill? Again, leave a comment below. Now, moving on to number 3, we're going to talk about homeless veterans, and specifically, we're going to talk about the Homeless Veterans Family Act, H.R. 95. Now, this particular bill has 301 co-sponsors, of which 102 are Republicans and 199 are Democrats. So it's a very bipartisan bill. And it's been stuck in the Senate, controlled by Mitch McConnell, since October 15th, 2019, so well over a year. And it was Representative Julia Brownley from California, a Democrat from California, who authored this bill. And this particular bill would direct the Department of Veteran Affairs to update the per diem payment calculation for entities furnishing services to homeless veterans, which include funding for a minor dependent. So basically, this particular bill, it would be supporting not just the veteran who's homeless, but any of the children who happen to be minors. This bill passed the House with no objections and was included in a larger bipartisan veterans package that would support veterans' housing benefits. There is unfortunately no similar bill that has been currently introduced in the U.S. Senate. So, why is this bill important? So, Congresswoman Brownlee said, and I quote, "It is absolutely unacceptable that veterans with children are living on the street and or in other unsafe locations because the VA cannot reimburse community agencies for housing them. It is imperative that we fix chronic homelessness among our veteran population and help keep families together and safe, while providing long-term, stable living environments for veterans to thrive." Coming in number two, with respect to which bills I believe that Senator Mitch McConnell is not going to allow to have a floor vote in the upcoming new session of the Senate, is going to be regarding immigration, specifically H.R. 1044, the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act of 2019. Now, this particular bill has 311 co sponsors in the House, 109 are Republicans, and 202 are Democrats. So it's a very bipartisan bill. And this bill has been stuck in the Senate, controlled by Mitch McConnell, since July 10th, 2019. Now, it was Democratic Representative Zoe Lofgren of California who authored this bill, and it was drafted to address the immigration application backlog that exists. This bill increases the per country cap on family based immigrant visas from 7% of the total number of such visas available that year to 15%. And it eliminates the 7% cap for employment based immigrant visas. So it also removes an offset that reduced the number of visas for individuals from China. Of the unreserved visas, not more than 85% shall be allotted to immigrants from any single country. There's also a similar bipartisan bill in the Senate titled S386, Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act of 2019, which is also stuck in the Senate Judiciary Committee chaired by Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. So, why is this bill important? Well, lawmakers on both sides of the congressional aisle agree that backlogs and lengthy processing times for immigration applications are a problem. The backlog at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services currently stands at 2.4 million cases as of May in 2019. And this represents applications from a variety of immigration benefits, such as specialty occupation visas, work permits, green cards, and citizenship. That's resulted in a mounting wait time for decisions on those applications, which advocates say are creating uncertainty for businesses to the detriment of the U.S. economy. So, do you agree or disagree? Again, comment below. And finally, coming in as number one most bipartisan piece of legislation to pass the U.S. House of Representatives that will likely never receive a floor vote in the U.S. Senate, controlled by Mitch McConnell, is dealing with veterans' mental health. Specifically, I want to introduce you to H.R. 4305, the PAWS for Veterans Therapy Act, which has 324 co sponsors, of which 190 are Republicans and 134 Democrats. So it's extremely bipartisan. Now, this has been stuck in Mitch McConnell's controlled Senate since February 5th, 2020. And it was actually a Republican representative who authored this bill, Republican Steve Stivers of Ohio, who was named the 11th most bipartisan member of the House of Representatives in 2019 by the nonpartisan Lugar Center and Georgetown University's McCourt School of Public Policy. Now, what does this bill do? Well, this bill requires that the Department of Veteran Affairs to implement a pilot program to assess the effectiveness of addressing post-traumatic stress disorder related to post-deployment mental health for our veterans. And it would specifically use a method where veterans train service dogs for veterans with disabilities. Now, there's a similar bill in the Senate, and it's titled S2948, Canines for Veterans Therapy Act. But this bill went nowhere in Mitch McConnell's Senate. In fact, it wasn't even introduced to committee, at least what's reported on Congress.gov. So, why is this bill important? Well, this bill cites a 2014 statistic that says 20 veterans died by suicide each day. This bill would direct the Department of Veteran Affairs to be more effective in its approach at reducing the burden of veteran suicide connected to mental health disorders, including PTSD. Now, there's a new rigorous scientific research providing a persuasive argument that service dogs ameliorate the symptoms associated with PTSD. Service independent organizations have provided a proven track records of training service dogs for veterans with severe PTSD and dramatically improving the veterans' quality of life, ability to re-enter society, and most importantly, their chances of survival. So in summary, this bill would create and fund a pilot program for 5 years to help support our veterans who serve our nation. So do you agree, disagree? Leave a comment below. Now, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Feel free to subscribe if you like the content, like and share if you want others to hear about what was in this video. And of course, until next time, YouTube, be well.